us that she has a point on this, right? So people didn't keep it to themselves. They transmitted. They transmitted. The question is, when this information was transmitted, do we have this transmission history from all the various peoples that was transmitted, or there has already been?
There's no chain of narration.
Or has there already been some suppression attempts?
Okay, so my point would be that the fact that the earliest Christians, Jewish Christians, were writing to separate churches that were far from each other, the fact that those churches, they were speaking about the beliefs and practices that they already held. So they're not sending them word of how you, they are giving them advice on you should act this way, you should treat Gentiles this way, anyone who comes in, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that they already had those beliefs showed that the earliest writings that we had, they're affirming those beliefs rather than transmitting them, if that makes sense. They're saying, look, we know you have this church and we would really like it if you could make sure that on a Saturday, so, you know, those little details. But the fact that all of those letters went to different geographical locations, they all preserved the teaching in as much as those letters match up. So if we've got copies or evidences of those early church fathers' writings, it's not a chain of narration, but we know who wrote them. We know that Paul was a prolific writer. You know, he wrote to this church, the 7 churches, all of these different. And because they were scattered, or not scattered, but because they had travelled away, the fact that they then match up again, and when Nicaea happened, even though they're omitting stuff, they're not. I don't believe that there were any additions in that not first century writings. Do you see what I mean? Like, I don't think they were saying, we're just going to add this bit.
I wasn't referring to these these first century writings.
Can we verify?
But my evidence is not limited to these writings that are survived through the church fathers.
That's my point about the Bible.
But
if it was completely changed.
But if you just try to engage on my point, on this point, the evidence, I'm not restricting to these writings that are preserved in the New Testament.
I see.
I'm saying the picture that we have from the surviving writings of the early Christianity is quite different than what you are now going to present. For example, early
translation. You mean
no. I'll explain to you. There are so many different forms of early Christianity.
Yes.
Before Orthodoxy, as you know today, became Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Some early Christians believed in 2 gods. You'll be surprised and shocked. How could they?
The Spirit and the Father. I think it was.
No.
It was Christ
You'd be naturally shocked. How can the Christians believe in 2 gods? 2 gods.
But you're
God.
still shocked that you think we believe
No.
in 3.
Sorry. No. One God which is good and one God which is bad.
Satan.
Would you?
Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that he is a God, and they say they're Christians. That's my point.
So,
there are still heretical
give you an example.
Christians
There are
around.
Christians. They were heterogeneous in their belief in the first 300 to 400 years of Christianity.
I can accept that.
A very
Because the
scholarly book written by Bert Ehrman, the agnostic.
Warwicker was a heretic, wasn't it? Like a Christian. Warwicker, the uncle.
Okay, let's
bring. In 600 years later, who were still against
different
the
form.
broad teaching of the church.
Yeah. So in early Christianity was not like a monolithic, a particular form that is today like a Trinitarian, right? So we had within this early Christian history, church fathers writing books called against heresies. Now think about it. It's very important to reflect on it.
Heresy if it's not well.
Why would a church father need to write books to condemn and clarify to the believers there are heretical Christians?
I would say,
unless
you've got the answer already.
Go ahead.
I've got another. I would say because in the New Testament it teaches if anyone teaches a gospel other than this, they are, and you know, they're to be rebuked, they're to be taught.
Very good point. Very good point. So what is
Christ?
Very good. Very good. I appreciate your knowledge and understanding on this. So what this establishes is that it wasn't from the earlier time one particular narrative about the teaching of Christ transmitted. There were other people who transmitted a different teaching, and this is differing. Okay, let's agree with that. Differing. Let's agree with that. Differing teaching from the very earlier on, which prompted prominent church fathers to write books to say, don't follow them.
Yes.
They are not following the true Christianity. Right. But what it shows is that there are existing people who form a set of belief system which were not necessarily the same as today. One group clearly was condemned by Origen or
Oh yeah, I know.
some of the church fathers, Irenaeus, were the people who didn't believe in Christ
As
being
divine.
crucified.
Being crucified.
Remember, yes. Remember, one of the things that is now levied against Islam by Christian.
Yeah, there can be no salvation without the blood of Christ, and if
Yeah,
Islam believes
Christians,
he was crucified,
yeah.
then
Christians,
they're anti-Christian.
Christians often come and say, crucifixion is an undeniable, undisputable fact
Well, it's
of
verified
history.
by history.
Please. My point here. Christians often tell us
Yes.
this is
I just did, yeah.
undisputable event of history. This is where we would disagree. There are ample evidence surviving from the Christians themselves saying there are a large enough body of people who did not believe Christ was crucified.
Because they saw him alive again once
No.
he was
This is
risen.
it.
500 people
The
saw
question.
him.
The question is not about what form they saw. You can interpret it in different ways, right? In fact, it's interpreted somehow like these people didn't believe that Christ can suffer bodily, so they said he cannot suffer.
I believe
So the various
that's true.
forms of this. But what it establishes is this crucifixion is not like that's what it says, and Islam's got it all wrong. In fact, to clarify that point, Quran doesn't even deny a crucifixion happening.
Does
It's
it
simply,
not? Can I
it's
just
simply.
ask then about a verse
What
that
did you
says-
think?
I think it says that they boasted that they killed him, but they slew him not. It was just made to appear to them as if he had been killed.
So it appeared to them.
the wrong
It's
way around.
imagine. I use this
So that's-
example
it
to.
did not happen, isn't it?
So it appeared.
Yep,
Okay,
they-
imagine now, people walking over there, and they're seeing you and saying, okay, we have seen the Princess of Spain having a discussion in Speaker's Corner, and they went and go and start talking about it in their social media and so on and so forth, thinking you are the Princess of Spain. Now,
I'll take the paycheck, but I mean, I'm not.
that's their mistaken
Yes.
what?
Yes. So that means that that
Perception.
proves that I am not. But I'm saying
Yeah,
that Christ
so-
was crucified
No,
and
the
rose
point,
again.
the Quran, the way the Quran describes this
Do
event,
you say that Islam teaches Christ crucified or not?
I'm going to answer your question.
Because who was
But I want
was
to,
it the Jews?
I want to answer this question by saying what the Quran says first of all. Okay, Quran categorically affirms that he was not crucified or killed, right?
Okay, so then
but
there's a
but
huge disagreement.
but
isn't it?
but
Yeah.
what the Quran doesn't say is that there was no such crucifixion ever happening or not. It simply says people mistakenly perceived that Christ was being crucified,
Okay, so-
and Quran rejects that claim
Yes,
and
so
denies that claim.
I would say then there are two things. There are that Christ now must be in heaven alive, like bodily in his Islamic, how if he didn't die, where is he? If it was taken immediately up by Allah, why? Because if it was righteous, Allah, I believe he prescribed to sacrifice and that kind of thing previous. I don't know. Is
Right.
it just
So again, very
But my other point
very
would be-
logical
my
and
oth-
important questions you've
My
asked.
other point would be that Muhammad came at least, say, 600 years, 625 years after these events.
Yeah.
And these events were already being preached by Christians as a redemptive factor in their salvation, apart from repentance and trust.
That's why
alone.
it makes it very significant.
And I would say it makes it counter-Christian because it is then denying the blood of Christ as a sole way to heaven.
Spot on.
Christ himself said he is the only
Yeah.
way.
So spot on, huge theological
That's-
difference,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
So what we believe is Allah took him up,
Yeah.
and he's in second heaven,
Only
and he will.
second.
No, in
Only
heaven.
righteous men.
No.
Only the second
This heaven is not the paradise.
Which heaven is Muhammad in?
No, he's not in heaven
Why not?
because
I'm
this
sure
this.
there's a hadith.
No,
that
no.
says
Let
that
me
he
let me
is.
tell you. Let
And
me
he
tell you.
spoke to Moses.
No.
And he got down and
When
spoke
we
to
talk about
Isa.
when we talk about these heavens,
Yeah.
we're not talking about paradise. We're not talking about paradise as opposed to hellfire. These are heavens beyond
As in
this.
a waiting
be-
room
no,
until the
no, no,
judgment.
no. The Bible talks about second heaven, third heaven. The Bible talks about many heavens, but it's not talking about.
There's only one judgment and salvation, or
Sure. The heaven, which is the heaven, the place of eternal bliss, happiness, joy, tranquility, pleasure.
And
It's not that heaven.
unlimited sex.
It's not that heaven we're talking about. So he's there beyond this earth. There are several heavens.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's in a lower. Is it lower?
No,
as
it's not
in
about lower and higher.
hierarchical? Okay.
It's
just
not about lower and
physically
higher.
lower.
This is just different levels of heaven. Okay.
Right.
He will descend again before the end of times.
Right.
He will come again, because like many major prophets, no,
Judge the wicked.
no, like many in your
I'm gonna
belief,
disagree,
in our
yeah.
belief different. Like many major prophets, he
Major prophet. Okay, good.
we believe he's a major prophet.
Yeah, I believe he's God.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a distinction, but
Of course there is. That's why we're discussing. Otherwise we'll be agreeing to everything. So he will come down and descend, and he will live in this earth.
is he still body? Does the Quran say? Is he still his
He will be body.
earthly flesh that he had before? Because he's been taken up. So did his? I don't know. Did he become
He's alive.
spirit?
He's
and
alive.
become-
He's not dead.
So has he got the same 2,000-year-old flesh? Is my question. Like, was he bodily taken?
Sure.
And then,
Interesting question, but I don't think it's difficult to us to even reflect. When the
No, I
Quran
think
talks
it-
about,
it's like-
when the
I think
Quran,
it shows that I
when-
don't believe it's true. So.
when the Quran talks about the people in the cave, it gives you an information about. So we know these were in the Quran in Surah number 18,
Was it
chapter
when
18.
Muhammad was fleeing from somebody?
No, there's a chapter in the Quran called Surah Al-Kahf, number 18 chapter. It describes certain young believers, which our tradition says they were followers of Christianity, they were Christian Nasara, they were followers of Christ. They were being persecuted by a particular king who was wicked, and God saved them. How? They went into a cave, and God sealed that cave, and
with a
put them into sleep. And they slept there for more than 300 years. And they woke up, nothing rotted, their body, nothing
I'm
rotted.
not saying it's not possible.
No, what I'm
but
saying-
I'm wondering if the Quran explains.
Yeah. So
that
what
aspect.
the Quran talks about is, they had human bodies, nothing happened to that. So even if Christ went up there, doesn't matter
I
if it's.
just wondered, does it say so specifically?
No,
Are there hadith
no,
or something that talks
I don't
about
think it does. But it's understood that he's alive, and God is the one who provides the sustenance, right? Keeping him alive. So when he's going to come down and descend, he has two major roles to play. Two major roles. One is to fight the Antichrist. The Antichrist is not Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, according to what some Christians believe.
No, I think the Antichrist is a supernatural entity.
Fair
I
enough.
believe there are
Fair
humans
enough.
who have anti-Christian
Sure.
or
So an
Antichrist.
Antichrist has already been taught or warned by many prophets in the past, because he is what we call fitna in Arabic, which is like tribulation, because this individual will come a place and make the whole world under his control in various ways because of technological advancements perhaps, and the world will be really in tribulation. So he's a dangerous individual. He will declare himself to be the one like God. So people shouldn't be worshipping God, should be believing in him instead. So this individual will be killed. That's why he's called Antichrist. Christ will eliminate him, kill him, and then he will establish on this earth a peaceful
for 1,000 years.
peaceful coexistence of this earth, about 40 years or so. Okay, 40 years or so, where people will be believing in God, okay, and he will establish justice and peace on this earth, according to God's law. Of course, mercy. He is
Justice and
now.
mercy are not the same.
He also, Quran and our Hadith reports, he will break the cross and kill the pigs. These are symbolic.
Which cross?
No, these are symbolic utterance to imply that those people who worshipped him as God. Sorry to disappoint you.
No, I don't believe a word of it. So
Right. Of course, fine. But that's our tradition.
Yeah.
That he will make it clear to that's not acceptable, because I am not God. I am a creation of God who is the Messiah.
So when he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, I am the first and the last, how do you get, I'm sure you
Okay,
can get
so let's
around
discuss
it,
that. No, we're
but-
getting around it.
No,
Let's discuss
I'm saying,
this.
I'm sure you have a way to say that that's not your belief, and that doesn't make him equal to Allah. Yes. And that's confirmed by Muhammad, isn't it? Yeah.
When somebody says I'm Alpha and Omega,
That's
now
a specific name of Allah.
Allah's
The
name is not
first
Alpha and
and the
Omega. No.
last.
Alpha doesn't mean first.
Okay,
Omega doesn't mean last. These are
so
just
Revelations,
letters of the alphabet.
It repeats that. It says, Christ says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. So it's two separate titles that he's claiming.
But wouldn't that be a problem in your understanding?
No, it wouldn't be a problem in my understanding.
What about the Father? Is he Alpha?
Yes. God is the first and the last.
No, let's talk about individually. Is Christ Alpha or the Father Alpha?
Both.
So how can they say I am the only?
He didn't say I'm the only Alpha. He said I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And I believe he is the God, and so is the Father, and so is the Spirit. So they're not contradictory if I say all three of them have those attributes, because they're three. I'm sure you understand the Trinity, you just don't accept it. Like, I don't have to explain the actual, they're one in purpose, they're one in authority, they're one in power, they're one in essence, they're all that.
Did they choose to be together? No, did they exercise their choice to remain together?
I imagine so. I don't know if it's possible.
Or was it forced? Was it forced?
By who? Who could force God to do anything?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm asking you. Who?
Yeah, if it's not forced, it's by choice.
Well,
that means.
Or it's just I can't choose to separate. I can choose to separate my leg. I can't choose to separate out something.
Can the Father choose to separate from the Son?
Yes.
That means they have a choice.
Not in terms of a disagreement or a separation.
Can they disagree?
I wouldn't.
Are they independent enough to disagree?
Yes, Christ could have acted. He could have, but he was sinless, so he didn't. But as a man, he could have
as
said
God,
something.
as God.
No, but whilst they're in one essence, no, I don't think. I'm not
So-
a theologian, but I don't think so.
This is where the Trinitarian understanding, or anything that has more than one absolute being, it's a real difficult question for people to accept. If you have someone who's absolute
Yeah.
in their will,
Yeah.
are they really in compromise to accept and follow exactly what other person thinks, or they have their own independent
I understand
choice?
what you're saying. So what I would suggest is that. It says that through him and by him, meaning Christ, all things were created. So that, to me, I believe that's the Father. His will is to form creation, but he does that through Christ, and then the Spirit of God hovers above the darkness.
Can they differ in their will? They have different wills.
I don't know, but I can't see why they would, because they are of one purpose. So if you're of one
This purpose,
maybe.
if you think about it,
Christ says, actually, Christ.
Did they choose to remain with this one
I've
purpose?
just got a thought. Christ prayed for the cup to be taken from him. So he wasn't disagreeing. He wasn't saying, I won't do it. But he was saying, if there's any other way, take this. But he cried and begged and, prayed for that to not happen.
Interesting
And
example,
still, he
which
went
answers my
through that
question.
suffering.
Actually, this answers my
But
question.
He didn't disagree with God. He said, but your will be
Yeah,
done.
but this answers my question clearly.
Yeah.
They have different wills.
Yeah, but only in his incarnation.
Sorry.
No, you said your premise was in their essence, when they're as one God
So
in heaven. not
when
he's a
he,
man.
you see, when you're a man,
Yeah.
you are totally subservient to God anyway.
I don't know.
You have to be.
I'm a woman.
Man or woman, you have to be. If Christ now,
You don't.
he-
You've got
okay,
free will. You
so,
can
so,
rebel from God.
so here is a
all the time.
very interesting question for you. How many will did Christ have in the flesh? The divine will and the human will, or only one will?
Okay, I would suggest that he knew his Father's will at all times.
How many will did he have?
I'm explaining. He had his own will, and he knew his Father's will at all times. And I imagine that he would be the one to work to bring those together. He wouldn't be saying to the Father, well, apart from the prayer of, can you take this from me? But I believe that he knew it wouldn't be taken. So I believe that he alone had one will. As the Word of God, he has one will, and the Father has one will. But I believe those are of the same purpose.
Sure, but that's not
Separate,
that's not precisely what I'm
but
asking.
they're in agreement.
Precisely, that's not what I'm asking. As a human,
many wills did
do
he
you,
have?
do you agree a human being
Has one
is a
will.
human only when they have a will? You have. So
No,
can you
I
have a
believe
human?
that people who are mentally disabled or on a life support machine,
Don't have a
they're
will?
still human. No,
They
they
don't
don't
have a will?
No, they can't get up.
No,
They
no.
can't decide to.
No, but
become
they have a
conscious.
will. It may be
How would you
incapacitated.
know? Yeah.
They had a will beforehand.
What if they're born that way? My proposition
It is-
is that
it is-
it's not the
it is
display of a will that makes
a
you human.
person- okay.
It's
Is
the
a human-
DNA and your humanity.
A human is a person. A person is defined one possessing a will. Otherwise, you're not a person.
Well, it's only a quibble, but I would say a human is defined as one who is born of two humans.
Look,
or
How can you be human
without a will.
expected to obey or disobey God when you don't have a will?
There are
You can
people-
only
there
obey
are people
when you have a
who-
will.
No, there are people who are paralysed and they can't do anything.
But that
So
doesn't
their will
mean
is
that
irrelevant.
no, that doesn't mean they don't have a will. They may be incapacitated in their
Yes,
will.
yes,
So
exactly.
it is
It's God's
no,
choice.
it is common agreement
I
that
understand what
we
you're saying.
we humans have will.
And you're trying to say this because you're saying that Christ had a will separate from
No,
the
Christ
Father.
is human.
Yes, he was.
Right.
And he was God.
Being human, he must have a human will.
Yes, that's why
Fine.
he prayed to the Father
Right,
to
right.
remove.
Thank you.
Don't waste your time. Please don't waste your time.
He spoke like a devil in your ears, right?
I'm not wasting.
Is that not so? You will never get it. So, but continue.
Right. So I once thought you were going to say, who's the devil speaking in my ears?
No, I nearly swore.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Right. So what we established is Christ as a human, he has a human will. But he's not only human according to Christianity.
He also has
He's
the will
also
of the Father.
no,
in
no, no, no,
him. He
no,
knows
no, no,
it
no,
at
not,
all
not that.
times.
As a divine person,
Yes.
he has a divine will.
Yes.
So there's two wills in Christ.
I see what you mean.
Good.
Yeah.
In this two will, the divine will may be in congruence, in conformity with the divine
Yes, that's
Father's
why he
will.
yes,
right.
exactly.
But he has a human will.
Yes.
So when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane,
Yes.
and he prayed and said, let
Take
this
this
cup be
from me.
away from me. Meaning what? Save me from death.
Well, yeah, take this burden
Yeah.
from my shoulders.
But if the plan was from the very
It
beginning,
was from Isaiah.
From-
the governance will be on his
yeah,
shoulders.
if the plan was from the very beginning for him to be
Yes.
die,
But he was
that means
human,
that,
so he was
yeah.
weak as
So,
well.
so whose will is he using? The divine or the human will?
Human.
Right. So human will. Now notice the very subtle point here. Christ is using his human will to plead to the Father.
Yeah.
What happened to the divine will?
It was abated. It was still there. He knew it. He knows the outcome, doesn't he?
Has-
he knows from the beginning.
Has the human will ever communicated with the divine will of Christ?
His own will, you mean? Do you
Remember,
mean it's Jesus'
Christ
will?
possesses himself
See, when
in
you
a
say-
body to
okay,
will.
Your question, when you say human will, you don't mean has my will ever communed. You mean has Christ as a human's will ever communed with the
Christ
with
the
Father,
divine.
with the yes,
Christ the divine,
Yes.
not the Father.
yes.
So at what point have you ever noticed in the Bible the human
answers his
Jesus,
own question.
the human Jesus is speaking to the divine Jesus?
I would imagine that when he was in prayer, I don't know. It's
He's
not
never
recorded.
praying to the divine Jesus.
No, I don't mean out loud prayer. I mean when
Even
he's in
silently.
silent prayer.
He's always directing his prayer to the Father.
Yes.
That is something that we need to explore. You need to explore perhaps. Why is he bypassing the divine will?
No, he already
Of-
has, because he's teaching people how to pray for
To
a
who?
start. He's teaching his disciples how to pray.
To
He
pray
gives
to
them
who?
the Lord's Prayer
To who?
to the Father.
All right.
In his
So-
name.
so-
He says, if you ask in my name, it shall be given.
But I want to understand why is it that the direction or directives rather to prayer and worship
All right,
is
that the
never
Father-
aimed
Okay,
at the divine Son, but only to the
No,
Father.
that's not true though, because he says he is the only way to the Father. Is
Did he
by-
say? Did he say pray to me?
No.
Worship
He said
me?
the only way to the Father is through me. I am the truth.
Yeah, so who
I
do you-
am the way. So I would suggest that he's teaching humanity. This is the prayer. You do it in my name. So he's claiming divinity right there. He's saying
That's
that
not declaiming divinity.
he is.
He's saying worship
I'll
who?
tell you where he claims divinity. When
Where?
he says, "Those who have seen the Father have seen me."
Is
Where-
that claiming
Where
divinity?
he accepts worship from humans and he doesn't
Okay.
rebuke.
Let's
them.
let's take these two examples.
Yep.
When he says, "You have seen me, you have seen the